So now we have to actually use these similarity values, and before we do that, we have to calculate the similarity values. And when we actually do the similarities, we do them on the errors that we obtained in the baseline prediction. So we basically subtract out to figure out how off the baseline prediction was, just for the training set again, because we can only use the training set. And then we augment the baseline predictor with the similarity values that we obtain on the errors. And so there's a couple reasons why we do that. First is that we really need to center these values at 0. And the reason they're centered at 0 is that we're kind of subtracting any bias out already by the fact that we're going to an error. So the errors are going to include 0, and in a sense they'll be centered around 0. And in order to do correlation, you need things to be centered about 0, so then you can either have positive or negative values. So if we did them on the ratings themselves, which are from 1 to 5, we can never have negative values. We'd only have positives, and that doesn't give us that sign differential that we need. So we subtract out, and we do them from kind of around 0 to some positives and negatives. And the second reason is that we're trying to correct for the errors here, right? So this is augmenting the baseline predictor with this similarity, the neighborhood method, really, it's called. And so we want to correct for those errors, so we really don't want to do it on the errors themselves, because that's what we want to sort of to go away. And I mean, we're not just going to add the errors back and give us 0 error and everything. We're going to do it in a way that makes sense and is not quote-unquote reverse engineering. We'll see how we do that in a minute, but first let's try to calculate some of the values. So here I'm showing the table that is, so here I'm showing the table of error values, and I got this by subtracting the predictions from the actual values. So I took the actual values and I subtracted the predictions. So if the predictions were higher than the actual values, then this is going to be negative, which means, well, we should have made the prediction lower than we had it. And if the predictions are less than the actual values, then this will be positive, which means the prediction should have been higher. And so we can use the positives and negative values accordingly. But now for movies 1 and 2, let's just apply that cosine similarity. To do that, we have to just figure out now the users that have rated both movies, because we can't use, in the equation, we can't have users that have only rated one, and clearly we can't use those that have rated none of the movies. But for instance, we can't use A here because A has not rated movie 2. We can use B. We're good because B has rated both movies. We can't use C because, well, this is part of the test set again, so we can't use the test set. We can't use D because this is part of the test set. We can't use E because we don't know this value, but we can use F because we know both of these. So we have to use only B and F for this. So for movies 1 and 2, then we're just going to apply that equation that we had before. We multiply B1 times F1, so we do negative 0.30 times negative 0.05. And then remember, we add, so we add the product of the terms. So we do this times this plus this times this. So then we add 0.17 times negative 0.58. And then remember, we have to divide by the length. And then we divide by b square root of b1 squared plus b2 squared. So this is negative 0.3 squared plus 0.17 squared. And then we multiply that by negative 0.05 squared plus negative 0.58 squared. Then if we do this out, we get negative 0.0220 over 0.3041 times 0.6044. Right, so this whole top right here comes to this comes to this, and this comes to this. And then that is equal to negative 0.11. Okay, so the cosine, or the similarity between movies 1 and 2, is negative 0.11. Remember, now we said that we have to see whether it's close to -1, 0, or +1. And if it's closer to -1 or +1, then it's useful, and otherwise it's not. And so you see that this is really kind of close to 0. It's somewhere around here. So that's not very useful at all. And so these movies we would say are really not very correlated.